All right. Good morning to those of you on the East Coast. Good morning also to those of you on the West Coast. I'm your host, Brandon Troy, host and co-creator of Movers and Shakers Unlimited. Thanks so much for joining us this morning, or maybe this afternoon, this evening, from wherever you're watching from. If you have been keeping track of the promos that we have been putting up, you'll know that today we have a special show in which we'll be talking about Pensacon, which happened last week, and I will not be alone in talking about that show over in Pensacola from last week. So give me a moment while I introduce each of our guests. First up, you know much of her work on the show that we have known as AG Chat with M for American Gods. She's also the co-creator of The Underfoot, and also, aside from providing her talents here with Movers and Shakers Unlimited, she also provides her talents to Pop Culture Squad, among many other websites. So it is my pleasure to once again welcome Emily Whitten. Let me bring her on. What's going on?
Hey, all good here.
Awesome. Good morning. And we also have another guest host joining us. Give me one moment. So he's also, been here on the show before. Want to welcome him back. He's known for, of course, his romantic comedy comics. 2006, debuting Love and Capes. 2014, bringing us Long Distance. He's currently the writer and artist of the hit Warning label comic online webtoons, and is also, of course, a frequent writer and artist for IDW's successful My Little Pony comics. It is my pleasure to welcome back Thom Zahler. Let me bring him on. Hey. What's going on, Thom? Good to see you again.
Good to see you guys.
All right. So let's get this show on the road, shall we? So first and foremost, thanks for taking the time to come on, guys. I guess I'll start first. How has your week been? Now in retrospective of doing our first con, or say perhaps one of your first cons in this post-COVID landscape that we're in. For either one of you, whoever would like to go first.
Go ahead, Thom. I'll go next.
I feel fine. No, everything's good. It was a great time. It was a great show. I think they did a lot of stuff right, and yeah, it's been nice getting back to reality.
Awesome. Em?
Yeah, when I was going, I was talking to our friend Adrian, who
yes.
people know from Pop Culture Squad, and we were saying how we weren't sure if we were ready to dive back into that many people at once, and how was it going to be. But she said, and I agreed, maybe it'll feel fine when you've got the table there, because Thom and I were in our Artist Alley Writers Row with our graphic novels and comics and everything, and that was pretty much correct. Especially when behind the table, it felt pretty like it has been, and it felt good to be back in that setting and to be meeting people who had either read my books before or were seeing them for the first time. So that was great. In the crowds, if you're walking through people to get somewhere, it was a little like, oh, there's a lot of people here. I'm not quite used to this anymore. But everyone was nice. You were in a good, like, oh, we're among our people. Everyone's interested in something here in this geek world. So that was nice. And I know we'll talk about it, but we also had panels and different things like that. So that was part of the getting back to things.
For sure. And as I said, that's exactly the reason why I wanted to bring up previously on con season, because I know for those of you that have been keeping track of many of the shows that we have done over here in Movers and Shakers, so much of it has been, when will we get back? Why are we doing this virtual edition of the show? While I love, still being able to enjoy our cons, you guys will agree that there's nothing like doing the live edition of a show versus a virtual edition. So just hopping right in. Just for those of you that may not be familiar with Pensacon, from doing just some brief research, was founded in 2013. It is the premier. According, this is all on its website. It is the premier comic book and pop culture convention serving Pensacola and the Gulf Coast. Before I hop into kind of the wins and losses, guys, or not even the wins and losses, but maybe the wins and tweaks would be a better word, is, I know for each of us, we're pretty seasoned when it comes to going to various cons. However, in terms of certain shows, there may be some that we frequent more than others. So with that being said, do you either of you have a prior history with Pensacon? And if so, can you share, what it has been prior to this edition?
Well,
this is your first.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
Go ahead, please.
I was just going to say, for both of us, we hadn't been to Pensacon before, but we went to their Halloween Fest, which was the end of October, one-day outdoor masks required show that was in October 2020. And, obviously we had to weigh the business concerns and read all the science, and then we decided, okay, well, it's outdoors and everyone's going to be masked, and all the things, the tables are 6 feet plus apart and everything. So we went to that one, and from that, that was a very well-run event, and very successful for us for a one-day show, I think. And it was great to meet people, and they were excited we were there, and it was nice outside, although a bit hot and, in the sun. And everyone was, taking the precautions, or they were being reinforced. So I hadn't been to a full Pensacon. I've had friends who have talked about how great it is, but I was feeling pretty confident that it would be a reasonably good show. That was my hope when I went.
Cool. Thom?
Yeah, I've heard about Pensacon. I hadn't been before. Like I said, Emily and I did the Halloween Fest. That was the first outdoor show that we've done, and I was just impressed at how well Pensacon handled everything. Like, you could tell they were taking it seriously, and it made it easier to decide to do a show with them in May when you had seen how serious they were about COVID and making sure people were wearing their masks and everything that was going on. It just made it a more relaxed environment to come into. And the show has a reputation for treating everybody really well, and I thought that that kind of stayed in place. I was really impressed with how they handled everything and took care of people. And they had all sorts of problems going on. They had COVID going on, but also there's a large bridge that connects Pensacola with parts of Florida that got knocked down the previous year during Hurricane Sandy, I think it was. And because of that, they didn't have access to all the hotels. There were all sorts of compromises and stuff that the show had to deal with, and I thought they did a really good job with it.
Gotcha. And with that being said, I guess I'll just hop right into perhaps the things that I feel like it would be a good segue into, like, the wins of the show. Like, just from your experience of being there as guests. I can think of maybe a couple of things, just to get the ball rolling, and talking about just the protocols in and of themselves. With I read a little bit about what their plans were for Artist Alley, and even with the panels from your side as guests. What were some things that you felt were executed very well with some of those facets of the show?
So the guidance changed right before the show. So I think the show was figuring some stuff out on the fly.
Gotcha.
Where, the CDC guidelines changed about regards to masks. So I'm vaccinated, and Emily's vaccinated. I didn't wear my mask on the show floor, but you're always spaced out, and lots of people were wearing masks, and I don't think there was any sort of push about it. Like, everybody went to their own level of comfort, which I thought worked pretty well. The panels were off site. There were times where, for convenience, like especially going to the green room, running into actors, like you kind of masked more if everybody else was masked, because you figured if people were wearing masks, you were going to be considerate of that.
For sure.
What I was surprised at was how quickly it felt natural again. Like, I thought there'd be much more of much more of like a mental roadblock towards seeing people's faces and dealing with people. I did find that like handshakes were, you could tell that people were seeing if people were comfortable with things before doing things, which I thought was really cool and interesting, and just, I don't know, it just made it more comfortable.
Gotcha. M.
Yeah, I mean, everything that Thom said, as he said, we had both been vaccinated before we got there. And, you know, it did feel reasonably comfortable. Like some people were wearing masks, and I didn't wear my mask on the show floor after I got in and saw what everything was like. And we had read all the guidance ahead of time, or at least I know I had carefully read everything before even deciding to go, and then the new guidance and everything. But it did feel pretty natural. It was awkward to, you know, if you wanted to like give a friend a hug or give a handshake, it was like, oh, are you okay with this? Am I okay with this? What's going on? But you know, we figured it out. And the thing that I noticed that doesn't actually have to do just with Pensacon, but is just like a thing, I think, is after a year plus, you know, obviously I'm out walking around doing errands sometimes and stuff, but after a year plus in my own society more than anything else, and Thom's and, you know, a few friends and stuff, I felt like I was like, walking in crowds feels weird. What is fashion these days? Like it was just like weird being in crowds of people because we haven't been in crowds of people. So that really didn't have anything to do with Pensacon per se, and more like something I'm feeling regularly as we get back into going out. Like I'll just go to a bar and be like, what is fashion? What are people wearing? It all looks weird. I don't understand people anymore, you know? So,
Sure, of
but at the
course.
same time, but at the same time, it also felt very natural and fine to interact with people. And I think in part, at least, as I said, that's for me, it's because, you know, I had been in conventions in all situations before. You know, I've helped run them, I've been behind the table, I've been on panels. So that stuff, it's easier to like kind of fall back into the social aspects you already had. But yeah, no, I think Pensacon did a good job. It felt natural. Some people wearing masks, you know, if you were having a direct conversation with someone who was wearing a mask, you could put your mask back on if you weren't wearing it so that everyone felt comfortable. And you know, with us both being vaccinated, I was much less concerned. Plus, it's like a huge arena, so it's not like a closely confined room that we were in, and the panels were, you know, reasonably large and seemed well ventilated. So, yeah.
Cool beans. So I guess just to you know, chat further on that, I guess the other thing that I found you know, interesting in terms of the protocols was just the, you know, just the idea of, you know, what facets they were stipulated that it was, you know, okay to, you know, not wear a mask versus wearing a mask. I guess if I recall correctly, I think they, and you guys can correct me, where in the panel room, I believe it was all right, which I understand, which I get because, you know, you're constantly doing kind of that Q&A portion. In panels, you know, it was stated as fine as not wearing masks, if I recall. And I know at least with photos, you kind of had to use it at alone the discretion of the guests. You know, some guests were fine, you know, just for the moment of just taking that photo of being without a mask. And even at some, I guess, for whether you're, you know, a guest or even as at a artist alley, that, you know, in some cases, some folks, I guess they put up plexiglass, I guess, or they put up some type of barrier. So can you speak further to that, at least in the panel capacity, since, you know, that was another facet that you guys did?
Yeah, well, I mean, they did say like if you were a panelist, you could take your mask off. The panels that I was on, we were not wearing our masks, and of course, you're back from the audience at that point.
Sure.
On one of them, we were on like a little stage one, and the other one, we were still, even though we were on the same level, we were, you know, still far, like more than 6 feet back, probably like 8 or 10 feet. And you know, when it came to, so I, you know, as I said, I didn't wear my mask because I've already been vaccinated, and also, like, you know, if people are wearing masks when they're on stage or something, then you assume they, you know, still feel comfortable with that only, or they maybe haven't been vaccinated yet. We haven't all had the opportunity, or we haven't all been able to do that yet. So I did see some guests with like a screen that, you know, a plexiglass thing, a travel one, Some guests were wearing masks, some were not. Some were wearing masks when they weren't, at their table, like, just traveling around in the crowds more versus meeting someone one-on-one. And, we've all been wearing masks, or I've definitely been wearing a mask since March of last year. And it really doesn't bother me, except if you're talking a lot, because then it kind of like rubs on my nose and it eventually starts to really get like, this is bad.
Yeah.
So if you're at a convention all day, like selling your stuff, talking to people about your books, and then being on panels, that is the point where I would expect if I was doing that all day, I come home and I have like, a red mark or something. So I was glad that we had gotten to that point before going to this convention. And also, to some extent, I knew that I would be vaccinated by the time I got there. So I hoped that by this point, maybe we wouldn't have to wear masks all the time at that, and then it would be a little more comfortable. But for anyone who was, like, I was glad for people to be wearing them if they wanted to or needed to, or whatever the case may be. I think that it was everyone's, as Thom was saying, by this point, personal comfort. Before people were able to get vaccinated, it was a different story.
Gotcha. Thom, you second that, or?
Yeah, everything Emily said. I didn't get my picture taken with any actors, so I didn't get to experience the plexiglass.
Gotcha.
I did make it to the...
I did. Sorry.
I did make it to the celebrity area. I was kind of surprised how open it was. I thought there'd be more masks or distance with some of the actors. But I'm also guessing that they all, self-assessed before they came out. I don't think there were any actors who said, well, I'm not vaccinated and highly at risk, so I'm going to do this incredibly difficult show where I'm going to interact with tons of people. So I think people were, making their own call on that. And actually, the plane was the hardest thing for me, wearing the mask again. I've flown once before, but with so many places, with so many opportunities not to have to wear a mask anymore, like being on the plane for 3 hours wearing a mask felt different than when we flew down the last time.
Cool.
That's true for me too. Yeah. The plane was like, oh, and I'm hungry, and it's now I have to do this whole thing again and everything. But you do what you need to do. If that's the current guidance for planes and public transport, then that's the current guidance.
Definitely. And just with that being said, and talking about you guys commenting on how seamless a lot of things were, and how impressed you were with how elements of the show were executed. As you know, with any show, no show is perfect. I'm sure that there are things that can always it's always a learning curve, or something that you feel wasn't bad per se, but still could be tweaked, or maybe something that can be built upon if you ever came back. And with that being said, and I'm assuming it doesn't even necessarily have to deal with just adjusting to coming back to a con in the live version. It may just be something that a lot of people wouldn't think of. Would there overall, would you say that there were any elements that you were like, I wish like it was tweaked just slightly in a different way, or I like that they had this. I'm hoping that they build further in this direction with what they tried here.
I need him to fix that bridge.
I think they're working on it.
It does make a difference, because we had to drive on our own 15 minutes to get to the show. The show provided us a car, so there were people who had transport, and it was easier, but parking was sometimes a hassle. And since we haven't done the show before, there's a lot of figuring out, like, how do you load in, how do you load out? At San Diego at this point, I know which elevator.
It's a well-oiled machine.
Yeah. I know which elevator to get at that's going to get me to the parking garage the fastest, and when to take the stairs and all that kind of stuff. So I think that will make things more convenient. And I don't know if it was pandemic or staffing, or the show is normally in February, and this year it was in May.
Yeah.
And it felt like either the restaurants were not ready for us, or the restaurants were not able to stock up for us. Like the last day of the show, Emily and I and Bill Morrison went out to dinner at this place with fancy milkshakes, and the waitress comes over and says, "Just to let you know, we're out of milk."
Oh
That was so sad.
Yeah, and a lot of the restaurants were closing early because they were just getting hit so much. And I'm not entirely sure. Like, I'm sure it's multiple factors. Nothing's monocausal, but I know that Pensacon is almost like Atlanta in terms of how much that city appreciates and loves and supports the show. Like when you fly to the airport, all the gates are stargates and have different starships on them, and there's nothing but posters and images of the show as you walk through the airport, and it feels great. The show spreads out. Like the panels aren't in the convention center. The convention center is actually a hockey team's arena. So you're up on a ring. All the artists and writers are up on a ring around, which is really cool. I think it's interesting because all the tables are on one side, there's space on the other, and people will just wind up doing laps. So you don't have to worry about that thing where somebody's looking left and walking right and never sees your table.
Yeah.
And then the vendors were on the floor below, and it was nice to be able to like see that interaction. So that was really cool. And it was also like it's not a bad thing. I'm all for it, but I was really surprised at how many people were paying cash. Because I know during the pandemic I got really used to using Apple Pay on everything.
Yeah.
And like we're set up to do touchless, and it was surprising how few people did that. And I thought that was not what I expected.
Gotcha. Em?
Yeah, I know we're on tweaks, but I want to make sure I praise the wins first, because we were talking about some of the the stuff that went well with the pandemic, but also just the show overall. So as Thom said, like you get off the airport, it's themed. The only other show I've seen really do that is like the only other shows is like Atlanta Dragon Con or San Diego Comic Con. So so that's really cool, and it was fun to see the theming, and that continued through the airport. And I did like the setup was different from anything I've had at a convention with the arena and everything like Thom was describing, but I thought it was cool. Once you get used to it, it's cool. And the panels being offsite could be problematic, except they were pretty good about their driving system, so they would come and pick up the guests. Now, this is a little tweak, but before I go into that, I will say I know they had some difficulty in getting enough staff this year, or volunteers this year, because it's not at the same time and COVID's still going on and stuff like that. So I think that in general, this was probably due to not having as many people as they usually do, maybe by like 2/3 or a half as many as they would usually have. I remember somebody gave me some kind of numbers, and I feel like it was something like half or 2/3. So the one big tweak I would give Pensacon is tell your guests ahead of time what panels they're going to be on. I'm really glad to be on panels. I would love to know it before the day I get to the convention and I'm setting up my table, and it turns out I have a panel in an hour and 15 minutes and I don't know how it works. Now, they do give you like an explanation along with your panels that are in a chart, but if you don't look at that right away, you don't know. And so fortunately I looked at it because they're supposed to show up and come get you, and they didn't ahead of time. So I hunted somebody down and said, how does this work? And then they took care of it, and they made sure I got there, and I was pretty much on time. But I didn't know ahead of time I was going to be at a panel, and we'll talk about why that was also kind of important when I got to the panel, when we get to the panel stuff, if we're doing that separately. But so I would say tell your guests ahead of time that they're going to be on panels. Make sure that they are fitting to the appropriate panels they're going to be on, and tell them how the system works ahead of time if they haven't been to Pensacon, because someone will come to your table, lead you down to the area where they then drive you off site. And if they don't do it, that's a problem. It kind of happened twice, but one of them, I had been added to a panel by the person running the panel, not by Pensacon, but I did, I was trying to let them know and make sure everything worked out. Fortunately, I got to things I was supposed to be on, but that's my big major tweak. If you're a guest and you're at a table or somewhere where you can't just wander around, all the time, it can be a bit stressful to not know what you're supposed to be doing or how the system is supposed to work. But so that's the biggest tweak, I would say. And I think some of that had to do with, in terms of like coming to get people, might have had to do with staffing. But the thing about letting your guests know what they're doing ahead of time can be solved anytime, even during COVID. So that was my big thing. I was very glad to be on the panels. But going back to some other things that were cool about Pensacon, on Saturday or Sunday at least, and maybe they had it outside other days, but they had like a little orchestra or string section set up outside, and then a couple of folks, strings players, I think violin, playing inside in the arena, and then like, you know, broadcasting it in the arena, and they were playing like popular like geek theme songs, like you know, it could be a Harry Potter or Star Trek or Lord of the Rings or something like that, and that was really enjoyable. I liked that a lot, and I thought it was very unique. I haven't been to another con that had that. And then they had some cool, you know, outside events. So we went to the Enchantment Under the Sea dance that was like Back to the Future themed, and it was very fun. It was very well set up, and they had a lot of fun stuff like food trucks and places to get drinks, but also inside like a cool setup, you know, with places to take pictures and different stuff like that. So there
We
was
got to
some cool
dance to
outside
Earth
stuff.
Angel.
What's that?
Said we got to dance to Earth Angel, sung by
Yes.
the actor who played Marvin Berry in Back to the Future.
Yes, thank you, Tom. Yeah, so we went on the dance floor for Earth Angel, and he sang it, and he, you know, walked around and sang it to different people, and we weren't in that area, so but we got to have a nice dance in that setup, and so there was a lot of good stuff going on, and the main tweaks I would say would be, you know, they'll need more staff. Hopefully for February they'll get more staff, but also just tell your guests what they're doing before they get there. I've never had that happen before, so that was exciting.
Yeah, no, that makes perfect sense in terms of, you know, just the so much of cons is logistics and getting from point A to point B and knowing what your game plan is. So, you know, yeah, that can definitely be something that can be quite an adjustment on the day of. So,
Yeah.
With that being said, I mean, we can segue right into panels. You know, based on, you know, what you were talking about before. I know, just to kind of, I guess, preface it with, you know, what they, from what I understand, how they were done is that they didn't. I guess they had a different capacity than what they normally would with a lot of the panels, and they spaced a lot of the seating out more so than they normally would. So, you know, can you talk a bit about that, and then, you know, you can comment further on the experience of the panels themselves. But yeah.
Yeah, since I was talking about it before, I'll
Go for it.
share mine first. So
Yeah.
the one that I was on that I didn't know about ahead of time was on storytelling. How to not suck at storytelling was the name of the panel, and that's the whole description I had. Because it was on the app, but I hadn't had a chance to really check that out when I was trying to set up the table and all that stuff. So I went to that one, and I got there just about right on time. And the other three panelists, I don't know that they knew I was coming, although I did look at the app afterwards and we were all listed. But when I got there, the panel seemed to be about D&D gaming and storytelling. And I've never written for D&D gaming, and I've played, you know, one campaign basically. So my experience is limited. However, I can roll with things. It's fine. So we were able to have a really great panel. The other panelists were great. And they were, you know, we were good at bouncing off of each other and stuff like that, I think. And it was a pretty full room, reasonably spaced out, but it was pretty full and good size. So there might have been like, I'm terrible at estimating crowd sizes, but it could have been like, I don't know, somewhere around 35 people, maybe.
Okay.
And it was, you know, for that room, that was a fairly full room. And what was really funny was one of the other panelists, he said towards the, you know, Q&A portion of it, he was like, how many of you here want to be writers? And a bunch of people raised their hands, like, how many of you knew this was a panel about gaming and storytelling when you came? And how many of you didn't know?
See where this
he
is
didn't
going.
know either. And so he was like, how many of you didn't know? And like half the audience raised their hand. I raised my hand. I was like, I didn't know. But it was actually a really fun discussion. Storytelling in gaming and other places, it's all stories. So we were able to really do a full discussion. And then I had several people show up at my table in the next couple of days who had been at the panel, and they wanted to look at my books. They wanted to, which I should always mention, The Underfoot, volumes 1 and 2. Volume 2 just came out. Volume 2 just came out last month. So very exciting stuff. But and it will be a trilogy. But anyway, so like they were coming to hear about my books. One of them came to like ask me about like writer's block, and another one came to talk to me about the writing process. And so it was great to be on the panel. It was fun to roll with these other folks who were just like, all right, well, we all know how to storytell, so we'll just talk about that. And it was really good time. So I'm glad I was on it, and it was just a little confusing at first. But the other panel I was on was with the Long Box guys, Tom Strange from the Long Box guys. We had just been on Twitter, and I was like, I'm going to Pensacon, I'm going to a convention, I'm so excited, I'm going to a convention, because it had been so long. And he was like, oh, great, well, if you want to, I commented on the panel, which was going to be like stupidest supervillains. And he was like, oh, if you want to, you can be on the panel with me and Tony Isabella. And I was like, creator of Black Lightning. And I was like, yeah, that sounds fun. I mean, I had to check what it was. And then I was like, oh, okay, yeah, let's do that. So that one I knew I was going to be on. So I was a little more prepared. And it was really fun. It was just me and Tom, and not this Tom, the other Tom, and Tony Isabella telling stories about, our thoughts on the villains or talking about them. And Tom had a little slideshow going. So that was good. And it was a smaller crowd, but it seemed like everyone was having a good time, and it was definitely like spaced out because it was a small enough crowd they could really sit far apart. So those were really fun panels, and I think at least one or two people from that panel also later like showed up at the table. I know a couple of them at the very least had been there.
All right, cool. And Tom, I know you got a skedaddle, so if you could like give a quick synopsis of how the panels were for you at this year's show.
The panels were good. I did a drawing competition panel, which was a lot of fun. That was weird. It's always weird coming into a group that's already done it before because they already know how the rules, such as they are, work.
Yeah.
But that was delightful. And then I did a kids comics panel that wound up being really good. Sometimes those can be hit or miss, only because you're covering a lot of the same ground. But there were enough different people on the panel and enough different questions from the audience that it felt fresh, which was important. And they didn't, I don't think they had, at least in the panel rooms that I was at, because like I said, it's spread out throughout Pensacola. And since they drive us around, I don't know where anything is. Like, I don't know how close you are from the convention to the facility where the panel is, because I don't have to see the outside. But they didn't have anything roped off. It was more kind of like self-assessing, which I thought worked out well, because that way you don't have a group that's too big for the little space that they have, and everybody was spaced out, but people were doing that on their own, which I thought was good. And then the panelists, most of us weren't wearing masks, which made it easier to talk into a microphone. So that was good. And the show was just great. It was nice to be out again. It was nice to see people buying stuff again and talking again, and being able to buy a Boba Fett Geeky Tiki, which was really cool. And BB-8 earrings, those weren't for me.
That's right.
But yeah, it was just it made me feel better about things coming back, because it felt like people hadn't forgotten how to do it. I've read stuff about pandemics that people actually forget and then don't talk about them, that there have been other pandemics that people almost edit out of reality. Nobody wants to deal with what they had to do during that time. And it kind of felt like that, because I thought there would be a lot more uncomfortable getting back to being with people. And I felt like it felt really normal really quickly, but still really respectful, which I was not necessarily is what I was hoping for. I just didn't know if it was going to happen.
All right, cool. Well, quick plugs, because I know you got a skedaddle right now. Quick plugs before I let you go. Go ahead.
ThomZ.com, THOMZ.com is all my stuff. I'm doing Love and Capes in the Time of COVID, which apparently nobody will remember in a few months, much like dealing with the silence. But that's going on. It's on Patreon. You can read ahead there. I've got a new issue of My Little Pony coming out in the next couple months. I know it's been solicited. And yeah, I'm just doing more stuff there, and all my stuff's up for sale on the website. So I'm a cartoonist in a burning market. So please, please, please buy stuff. I have a house payment next month.
Sounds good, man. As always, it's always a pleasure. Till next time.
All right. Great seeing you. All right.
Bye, Thom.
Bye.
Bye.
All right. So, Em, I guess my next thing is, just getting into just the final thoughts of just wrapping up everything into a nice little bow, if we will, of how the experience was, at Pensacon, just as a Spark Notes wrap up of everything that we have discussed.
Yeah. Well, first of all, I do want to mention also, Pensacola is not a huge place, but we did get to go and see historic Pensacola. So if you go to Pensacola, I really did like that. You get to go and see like what life was like back when and get some history lessons and all of that. And I'm such a geek for that kind of thing. So we had a great time. We were also going to go to the beach for longer, and we had done that at Halloween, and that was really nice, but it was really windy. So like we didn't actually like stay at the beach for long. So I was glad we had done the historic Pensacola, because it really felt like we got that day, because we were there a day early. So we got that time to do something. And I'll roll that into when I met one of the guests, because I met Margaret Carey, who was the movement inspiration for the original Tinkerbell animation, among other things that she'd been on like Andy Griffith's show Lone Ranger. She's done audio stuff, voice work, but that's one of the main things she's known for, is she was the movements of the silent Tinkerbell. And she was really sweet. She's in her 90s, lovely lady. And I asked her how she was enjoying Pensacon and Pensacola, and she's like, well, I've seen the hotel, I've seen the airport, and I was like, oh, I hope you get to see something else before you go. We got to go and see historic Pensacola, and it was really great. And she goes, I now don't like you anymore, and I'm not talking to you. And she kind of turned away, and jokingly, but it was very funny. And she also had lovely blue eyes, and so I was gonna say anyway, but now I have to say, you have the most lovely blue eyes. And she said, now I really like you again. She was so cute. So it was really lovely to meet her. And I also got to, in the guest area, I wasn't there for long, but I got to meet her and Mary Gibbs, who was the voice of Boo in Monsters, Inc., and several other voices as well. She's done a bunch of work, but that's just one she's known for. And briefly met the voice of Barney, because he came over to get a picture with Margaret Carey, so they were both there. So, but also it was really nice. Ashley Eckstein was there from Her Universe, and who's also the voice of Ahsoka Tano and has done a bunch of other, work in acting as well, and wrote a book about her, dreaming to do this stuff and then being able to do it. I think it's called It's Your Universe, unless I'm misremembering. It came out in 2018, and I talked to her about it at that point. And I think it's called It's Your Universe. So she and her husband were there, and I hadn't seen them since 2017, 18 in person when I did an interview with her. But I had known her through that and the Her Universe fashion shows that I had been covering and everything. So we got to see each other. And the loveliest thing was, the first thing I said to her was like, yesterday I was wearing, the one of the Loki shirts that's from Her Universe. I love all this stuff still. I'm so excited that it still continues to go on. And
yes.
She was like, oh yeah, it's great. And so that was the first thing I said to her. I was like, I'm so excited about the fact that this is continuing and you're still doing so well with that, and it's all going so great. And there is going to be another Her Universe. There's going to be the virtual fashion show, and then it will come back again to, when we're all back and everything. But there's going to be a virtual one this year during the virtual San Diego Comic-Con. So FYI, if you're a fashion person like me. And then the first thing she said to me after that was like, oh, I was so excited. I saw you in the program book. And since we last saw each other, you've had like 2 graphic novels out, and that's so great. And so she was like very excited for me. And so it's great to have, one of the great things about getting back to convention life is seeing other creators and being able to be excited for each other and support each other. And, feel that. And she's a very lovely and warm person, so that came through as well, of course. But like, I hadn't seen her in several years, and it might have been 1 year less if we hadn't had all of this.
Which is how it goes. Yeah. How it
Yeah,
goes.
you don't get to everybody every year, even if you're both there, because you're working and you're doing your thing, and you all have your schedules. But just getting to see her again and be like, we were able to connect again, even though it had been a while, and it's a great feeling. And then there were also people I met, sort of for the first time. So Nestor Carbonell and his wife Shannon Kenny were there, and I hadn't met them before, but I like his work, and I then learned that she had a book she had just written that was interesting, and so I talked to her about that. And it always makes me feel more alive to talk with other creative folks. It always is a thing I like, and so not having the ability to do that in person as much has been a big sadness for me, compared to like what I usually would be doing. So that's a really big thing, and I just loved seeing people I knew in the creative realm and meeting some new people, or just even getting to say like, oh, wow, the original inspiration for Tinkerbell, it's great to meet you. You're amazing. That's amazing. You've had this cool career that is, like so inspirational to people or so influential. So that was, and then Thom mentioned we got to hang out with Bill Moore. But he was at the table next to me. It was like Thom, me, Bill. So we ended up really hanging out, in between times. And
You went out just for a
I'll
second. Who did you say? I'm sorry. You went out just for a moment.
Oh, Bill
Gotcha.
Morrison.
Okay.
Oh, sorry about that. Bill Morrison, who worked on Simpsons comics, and he was also the editor of Mad Magazine for a while, if I'm remembering correctly, in 2017-ish or before that. And I mean, he's just done a bunch of stuff. He's very talented, just the nicest guy. And I'm gonna have to find and post the picture where we went out, as Thom said, after the con was over on Sunday, to dinner. And we took a picture of all of us doing the shawarma scene from Avengers, where we're all just
nice, very nice.
So I have that, and I'll post it up. But yeah, so it was again meeting and spending time with other creators, in the comics realm as well as this other stuff that I was talking about. I've missed it so much, and it's so great, and it's just. So yeah, I mean, the con overall, it was well set up. I think they needed more staffers than they usually would have more staffers, but it was well done. The only critique that I have outside of COVID stuff is just tell your guests what panels they're on ahead of time, and how that works ahead of time. But the panels were good. The exhibit floor, I did get to walk around. I bought a couple of books from folks that I was on the panel with and stuff. And also like other folks that I knew from other stuff. And, so I got to poke around that. I did a couple laps around Artist Alley to see who else was there. Tony Isabella was there. We got to hang out with him some. That was great. And yeah, so there were some good guests. There was some good exhibit hall, things to buy. There were some good panels. I mean, not just some, these were all good things about the convention. And the best thing of all was that we were at a convention. And lots of people bought my books. I'm very excited about that. And lots of people bought hamster ears. I did post about that. I didn't take a picture of everybody, but if they put them on immediately, then I would remember and be like, oh, can I take a picture? So I don't have all the many folks who wore hamster ears home those days. But yeah, it made people very happy to have them. It makes me happy to see them having them. But yeah, it was great to be out there selling my stuff and being like, hey, read the book. And I had, or please read the book, not, hey, read the book. And I had at least 2, maybe more people buy book 1 and come back the next day and buy book 2. And I had at least 1
Very
and
nice.
possibly 2. I feel like it was maybe 2 people who read both of them, who bought them both together, read them both. And as they were coming back around the laps, told me, hey, I read them and I love them, so it was really great because I got like immediate feedback from people who had bought my stuff at the show, where they came back for the next one, or they told me just out of the goodness of their heart, came back and told me that they really liked them. And so that was lovely. It was great to set up for the very first time with the second book in the series, because it just came out. And I'm glad that I didn't feel like I missed too many conventions after it came out. Like, it was fortunate that it came out at that time, and then I was able to go to a con within a month and be there with it, because it was originally slated to come out in April 2020. And so
Gotcha.
can you imagine what that would have been like?
Man, oh man.
Oh, man. Yeah.
But I guess we could say the big takeaway, and I'm a little jealous of you because that was
Sorry.
yeah, I'm a little jealous
Not too
because
sorry.
you
I had so
I
much
know,
fun.
I'm sure.
I'm like effervescing over here because I'm so glad that we're back at conventions and we had a good con.
That is the takeaway. Like
Yeah.
it's so exciting to know that and obviously it's not, happening all at once, but slowly but surely we're starting to get our cons back. Because, just as you said, you have a whole community that you are so used to interacting with when you're at your cons. I mean, we have a whole other phrase for it, right? Our con fam, our con peeps.
Con fam, con life.
Yeah.
I have friends I only see at conventions.
Same.
We met at a convention across the country, even though we live in the same area. So, like, I mean, obviously we've hung out in person here because we're right nearby. But some people I meet them, and that's the opportunity I have to see them.
That's it.
1 to 3, 4 times a year, depending which conventions we.
And in the case of, I was going to say, in the case of San Diego, you only see them because they can only do one U.S. trip out of the entire year. They may be in Australia and UK, wherever. It's the only U.S. trip that they can do. So that's the only time you get to hang out and see them. So. I guess that is the big takeaway. I'm looking forward, now that we are receiving news of other cons as well that are returning. Yeah, Baltimore Comic-Con coming back.
I will be there. I have a whole list of conventions I'm figuring out where I'm going to be, and I'm going to be at Baltimore, and I believe I'll be at AwesomeCon as well. So
yeah, AwesomeCon, New York here on the East Coast, Rhode Island. I love Rhode Island, so there you go. But yeah, exciting times. So with that being said, I already, thank Thom. I wanted to appreciate him for hopping on and talking about Pensacon. Before, I let you go, the drill. Go for it.
Yeah. Well, as I said, the Underfoot books 1 and 2. This is the first one, the Underfoot, the Mighty Deep. It came out in 2019. It was nominated for a Best Kids Comic or Graphic Novel 2020 Ringo Award. Please check it out. And then the second one, which just came out last month, the Underfoot Into the Sun. You can find all of those actually for sale at my website, which is the Emily ESSE, just like my username there, or my social there. It's theemilyesse.com. I have a store with everything available that I sell at the cons, and some book plates, since we can't be in person. I'll sign the book, but if you want a book plate with my signature and Ben, my co-creator, Michelle, our artist, and Thom, who we saw here, our letterer, we've got those, and they just came in. They were pre-order, and now they're in, so I can get those out to people who want them. So bunch of stuff available there. I also, as Brandon said, I did the American Gods, like recaps for season 3 discussion here.
Maybe we'll be back. We will see.
I hope so.
We see. I hope so. We'll see.
Whether it's a movie or a movie or whatever it might be. Maybe we'll be back. It sounds positive. I did an interview with Yetide Badaki, as part of the wrap up for the show, and she seemed positive about the idea that it would come back in some form. So, I mean.
And we have an audio version on the way in a few days, so be on the lookout for that, guys.
Excellent. Yeah, the video was great, but we had a few connection issues. So if you can't stand the video, like kind of freezing and stuff like that, we're going to have the audio version for you too. But yeah, so you can find me everywhere at the Emily ESSE, my website, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, Facebook, everywhere. And here on Movers and Shakers, I've done several things, including we did also Thom and I did a Falcon and Winter Soldier recap with you. Oh, we're gonna have to do Loki. I'm so excited about Loki. Anyway, so that's where you can find me. That's what I'm up to. There's probably gonna be more stuff, but that's what's going on for now.
Oh, there will be more, guys. I can attest to you. There will be more. Don't worry. So again, I want to thank Emily Whitten. Thank you so much. As always, it's always awesome to have you on, and always awesome to have you with having you on our shows. I'm your host, Brandon Choi, host and co-creator of Movers and Shakers Unlimited. You can find us on Facebook with our live interviews, exclusive interviews. You can also find us here on YouTube when we do a breakdowns of not just cons, but also of various shows. There's more on the way. I can attest to that. So be on the lookout. You can find us on Twitter at Move and Shake UNLTD, on Instagram at Movers Shakers Unlimited. And of course, you can find me, Brandon Troy ENT, as you can see right there on Twitter, and Brandon Troy _ENT on Instagram. Thanks so much for watching, and be safe out there. Enjoy your Memorial Day. I have a message out here. Thank you, Eggman. Enjoy your Memorial Day, guys, for all of you out there. Unfortunately, it's a little gray here where we are. So hopefully it is sunny and you guys are enjoying your cookout weather right now. But other than that, thanks for watching. Be safe out there, and see you soon. Bye.